This is David Sable coming to you again for New York Festival's Creativity from the Other Side, where we talk with the most incredibly talented people in the world. People from our industry, people from outside the industry, but people who have made creativity core to their beings, core to who they are, and all people that we can learn from. And we're coming to you, as we do, from Silverstein Studios in Lower Manhattan in the World Trade Center complex. Really, this is where the renaissance of New York is happening. This is where people are coming back to the office. This is where there's action, there's energy. It's absolutely unbelievable to be here. And today, I am so happy and so honored to have a new FOD that's a friend of David, so that's what happens on the thing. But as it turns out, you're not actually a new friend of David, because even though we haven't met, we have very, very deep connections, which we'll talk about, and some which we talked about before the interview, some which we didn't talk about yet. So we're going excited. So Elav Horwitz. Elav is the, I want to get this right, so you'll forgive me for reading, because it's a long title. Global Innovations and Creative Partnerships Director of McCann Worldwide. And if you know what McCann Worldwide is famous for, in my view, those are actually the things that they are famous for. And from our world in the festival, you are going to be on the executive jury of Future Now, which is really, really important. And we're going to end by talking about that and what you hope to see. So first of all, thank you for being an FOD.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I told you before that if you would have told me that, like, as Elav, like this like little kid from like Israel, that like one day I will get to be interviewed by you, it would be like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, and in New York with this like beautiful view. So thank you.
Well, thank you, because I can tell you that, as my watchers know, I do deep research on everybody. And all I've heard about is how wonderful you are. Forget the talent. Like, I could read that myself, but I've just heard how wonderful you are. So that makes me even happier. And there's a lot that we're going to talk about, because I want to talk about creativity, but I also want to talk about ethics and morality, because you have just an incredible reputation for the way you approach technology in an ethical way, and your insistence on people first. And those are things that sing to me. But first, let's just go back. And we don't ever follow a linear path, but I do want to start someplace and talk about this young girl growing up in Israel who always wanted to be in advertising. Now, I thought I was the only person like that in the world.
I always wanted to be in advertising.
Why was that?
I don't know, but like, you know, remember, like little kids, we used to have these like projects in school. And like some people will be the operations, some will be like designers. I was just like hoping all the time that I will be like in the advertising or like marketing group. And if I would not get it, I would ask for it. And all the time I was excited about that. And also like in Israel, like you know it, that like when you have like the ads, like the commercial break, you see like the names of like the company. The side, right. It's only in Israel, right?
By the way, everybody pay attention to this. It is the only country in the world that I know this happens. There might be others, so if there are, please do let us know. But agencies take credit for their ads. They do it in print, they do it in digital, they do it in cinema, they do it on TV. It's hysterical.
And then when I was in high school, I learned communication, and I wanted to do a project with like one of like the agencies, and it was easy because like you knew everyone from these ads. So I started like at the time, it was like sending like fax and like trying to call them and like ask them if I can work with them and like do like and again I was like 15 or like 16.
Do you remember?
Yes, it was like Fogel Levine. Like some of these agencies like are still successful, some of them are not. Like obviously before McCann, it was like Kesher Bar-El. So it was like the early days,
back in the day.
Early days, and some of them actually said like, and Reuveni Fridan, of course. And one of them, and I managed to have like some meetings in like some of these companies, and like every time I went to this agency, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like my dream. Fast forward, I was like trying to see if there was like an advertising like degree or like something in Israel that like I can learn. So we know it's like a small country, so you can learn like a little bit about communication. I didn't manage to find something like for college. And then as you know, like in Israel, we have to go to the army, which was
we're going to talk about that in a second, so hold that thought.
Yes. But it's everything I wanted to do.
Do you remember any of the advertising from that time? Do you remember anything that sticks out?
Yeah, of course. Milky. So Milky is like, how to compare it to like something in here.
It's like a Hershey book.
Yeah, it's like Hershey, like kind of like yogurt for like kids, but like with chocolate. And there was like this like famous ad that like this like woman like stealing like one like Milky, this like yogurt, and then there was like another one like that trying like to race each other in the supermarket. At the time, it was like pretty innovative to see like two women like fighting over like one yogurt. I don't know, this is like one of the things that like stuck with me. If like you would ask me about like the old days of like advertising in Israel.
I love it. All right, so now in Israel, everybody goes into the army.
Yes.
That's the national service.
Yes.
Now the truth is you could do national service, some people do, but national service is not just important, it's demanded. So you graduate high school or whatever, and you go into the army.
Yeah.
So you didn't do advertising in the army?
No,
you did? Not.
So I was lucky.
And by the way, that's another thing we share.
You were in the army.
Because I was also in the army in Israel, so that's a very good thing. But you probably would have been my mefakedet, which meant my officer.
We should exchange photos.
I was just I was just a foot soldier.
What did you do in the army?
I was a combat medic. We'll talk about that another time.
Yes,
but we want to talk about you.
So yeah, in Israel you have to go to the army. And I remember also like when I was in high school before, like one of the teachers like started like tell me, I think you should be actually in technology. I was like, really? I don't really care about like computers and technologies. I'm more like into art and creativity. She's like, I don't know. I think like you should consider it. And then you go to the army only on the day off, like when you start like the service, like you know what you're gonna do. You don't know anything before. You have like all of the tests, all of like the medical tests as well. And only when you wear your uniform, then you know like what you're gonna do for like the next 2 years. And I wanted to be like in the Air Force, like everyone else probably. But then they told me that like, I'm gonna be in the technology, like in Mamram, which is great. At the time I didn't know that, but like I called...
Explain to everybody what Mamram is.
Mamram is like the computer intelligence unit in Israel. Like most of the startups in Israel are coming from there. So like probably like the most two famous units in Israel, and one like when it comes to like technology and high-tech is like 8200, like Shmone the intelligence unit in Israel, like probably most of the Israeli startups that you know, like the founder started there, or like the other one is like Mamram. So it's about like computer technology, a lot of like innovations, like in the Israeli army start from there. So they told me like I should go and like do a course over there. I called my mom. I was like so bummed that like I didn't manage to go to the Air Force. She's like, maybe it's good. I was like, I don't think so. But of course, like after the training and everything, I started, and until today, I feel like so fortunate that I was able to be in this unit, because like it definitely opened my career in terms of like technology and creativity at the same time.
So let's just talk a little bit about Israeli technology, because startup nation, everybody knows that. And it is kind of interesting. My view has always been, and I think that it plays out in some of the things that you think, and let's see if I'm correct. Israel, what Israel is really famous for and really good at is applied technology. Mm-hmm. Israel is brilliant at taking what is a country of very small on and short of natural resources, but they're good at taking technology and applying it to solve problems.
Yes.
And a lot of that starts in the army, because it is very often life or death. And so that ability to see a problem, bring technology to solve it, but there's always a human element to it.
Yes.
And then those kids like you come out of the army, and then they apply it to things like Waze, mm-hmm. which I think most people don't realize actually comes from two guys who were in the Israeli army. And so they apply that same thinking, that same, how do I solve this particular problem, with technology, but understand that there's a human element. Did I get that right?
Yeah, exactly. I think in Israel, and I started to understand it like when I started to communicate with people globally in Israel, like as you know that, like we don't know like how the next day is going to look like, because there could be, unfortunately, like another war, there could be like another threat, there could be like shortage in terms of supply chain, there could be like different issues. So you don't have like the luxury even to plan ahead. So I think it's that, and then there's like something, so it's definitely like the ability to think differently, to think about like innovations, to apply, as you said, like technology to real human needs. But I think mainly there's like something about like our personalities as Israelis. There was a saying, like you would know that if like the door is closed, like we'll find a way to jump from the window and get in. And this is like Israelis. Like
and if not, you make a window.
Yeah, exactly. If not, you make a window. So I feel like as Israelis, like we can never, I think we actually have a problem. We cannot hear like the word no. So like if someone tells us no, it's like, what do you mean no? It's like a different way.
Right.
Like we'll try to convince you to get to the yes. And like at the end of the day, like we'll always find ways to get to the yes. So I think it's mainly like, of course, and like people spoke about, like the chutzpah, they think differently, think outside of the box, but like literally outside of the box, because we have to. We don't have like any other choice.
So I just want everybody to practice saying chutzpah, not chutzpah, chutzpah. So everybody take a second, say with me, chutzpah. You got it? Good. So let's jump just a little bit, because I think there is a bit of a track here. So in the Army, I don't know if there's 100% equality, but women actually do rise and have huge opportunities in the Army that maybe don't always show up when they come out, although the number of women CEOs in Israeli high tech is pretty high and pretty astounding. I know even in Silvertech, which is the incubator / accelerator here in New York that I'm associated with, most of our, I don't know if most is true, but probably 70%, maybe 75% of our CEOs are women, which is really pretty astounding. And I know that you believe in this, and you're one of the principles of Chief. Yes.
So I'm one of the founding members of Chief. Chief, I don't know if like people know about it, but like I feel it by now, a lot of people do. It started like in 2019. They had a small like place in Tribeca, actually close to here. Two amazing women decided to open like something that like I feel like every woman probably thought about. Like we should have like a club for successful women. We should have like a gathering place. Like we should support each other. We should mentor each other. I think they started to have like some things around New York and like around the globe at this point. But I feel like what they did differently was, from like the very beginning, create like a sense of community. And as Israelis, like we know that like we care about like communities, but it was, everything was like executed like beautifully, from the space to the talks to the session to the women. They decided to be there, and at the beginning it was like 200 women, and like we all knew each other, we all supported each other, we mentored each other. We also, I think like for the first time, at least for me, like everyone like spoke like so candidly about like everything, and like for me it was like a great way to start like in like meeting like more senior women in New York, like expanding like my network. Over the course of the pandemic, I thought like when the pandemic started, I thought like they're actually going to fail because it was all about like in-person communication. They actually thrived. So they expanded it globally. They did like virtual session. They managed to bring women from like all over the US. Like now they're expanding to Europe. And like, I think like, speaking of like this, it started from like in-person, but I think like they incorporated a lot of like technology and innovation. And now they have like an amazing app that like I call it like the most powerful LinkedIn for like successful women. So like before even going to LinkedIn, I always go to Chief. Like if I have like a need or a question, I would post something. And then because of like the sense of community, always there will be like someone wants to help like another woman and support. And for me, I think it's critical to maintain women in the workforce, like mainly to a point like around like high tech and technology. I have like a young daughter. I think about like all the time, like how I can support her and like help her thrive. And also
she's 2 years old. Have you taught her how to program yet?
I'm probably gonna start soon. Like she has like a onesie of Chief.
Good.
But my son, I also educate him about like equality, and I showed him like, by the way, like a clip of the Backstreet Boys a few months ago, and then the first question he asked me is like, why there are not girls in it? I'm like, you're right.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for you for teaching him. Yeah. So let's come to community, because you linked your experience and your background of being an Israeli to community, to chief. And I want to talk about COVID a little bit, because I think McCann has actually taken a leadership position, like a hard-ass leadership position, in bringing people back to the office. So there are agencies out there that are struggling. What I find interesting, actually, which I think is pretty interesting, is that the smaller, quote unquote, more maybe digital agencies, although they're not digital, but they like to call themselves that, are telling people, no, get your ass back to work. And some of the bigger holding company agencies are still saying, well, we'll send out a little, survey and tell us what would bring you back to the office. And of course, everybody's laughing. McCann took a pretty hard position.
I don't know if it's hard. I think
well, hard maybe is the wrong word. I think it's personally, I think it's the right position. But they put a stand. They took a tent pole and drove it into the.
Yeah, I think again, it depends, probably on the country. As you know, I have a lot of friends of mine, still in Tel Aviv. They're back in the office 5 days a week. That's it. That's the
community.
Normal, community. We all want to be there together. Obviously, the managers want to see the employees. I think in Israel there's also a trust issue that if you work from home, we don't really believe you work from home.
Well, chances are you're in the bed cafe.
Yeah, exactly. So or you're going to the coffee shop, and then in Tel Aviv you can also see each other on the street. I think in here, every company, we're still figuring it out. I think more people are coming to the office for sure. Definitely 2 or 3 days a week, which makes sense. I missed, to be honest, this small talk. So you will see someone at the elevator and you're oh, I need to talk to you about that, or this.
Right. The serendipity of meeting, which is what community is all about.
Yeah. And this shared experiences, you would go with someone for lunch, and you have a long conversation that we know would lead to something better versus just
So it's not a question of 5 days a week necessarily, but you are a believer that people should think pretty strongly about making an effort to come, at least in a hybrid way, back to the office.
And I think also parts of it that we started to experiment as a team, the fact that we live in New York. You also need to make time, we started doing it together, to go to a museum and go to an exhibition together, and then discuss about this exhibition and what it inspires us. So I think there could be either the office or find new inspirations in the city. Mainly it's important for a creative company.
But together
all the time, together. And or I would bring some of my team members to Chief, and we'll work there together. So that's the idea, that the connection.
Good.
At the end of the day.
I love that. So let's go back to Israel.
Yes.
McCann, you start to work at McCann, and you created a tech data offer.
Yeah, a tech date. Again, it was 8 years ago, I would say now. I know. I was there already for 4 years. They brought me to McCann in Tel Aviv to be kind of the digital expert. At some point, and it goes until today, clients love to say, we're looking for innovative solutions, come up with inspiring creative ideas. We want to see more technologies. And then there was a point that I said, okay, we have all of these amazing startups around us in Tel Aviv, and we don't do anything with them. At the time, we also Ilan Shiloach started the accelerator the time, and I said there have to be some kind of a connection. It was new at the time, and I said okay, I want to start connecting brands our clients with the local startups from Israel. And we had the first event was all about the future of advertising. So we bought I think it was 7 startups. We actually call it Tech Date, because the whole idea was to match a brand with a startup, and it was a tremendous success, because I think for the first time, a lot of these clients or brands, they understood okay, how they can incorporate some of the technologies. Then the woman who leads the innovation for Nestle in Israel, she said that was amazing. I have a big delegation coming from Nestle. I want to do something similar for them. And we started doing that, and more clients globally.
But from Nestle in Europe.
Nestle in Europe, yes. Right. Nestle in Europe and Nestle in the US, they came to Israel to see the startups. And they started to work like that. And again, like at the time, like no one did it. It was like mainly tech with like tech companies, but no one really thought about like traditional brands and how they can start like working with startups. And now probably every big company have like some kind of like a venture or an accelerator that are.
So then you took that basic approach, you come to New York, now you're running this globally for McCann Worldwide, which is amazing. And you applied it under the name of human tech, and you've looked at rapid hacks and teen hacks as a way to get to ideation and ideas. Tell us a little bit about that.
So when I moved here, thanks to my boss, or like we met like in one of like the conferences we had, and I told him like, listen, I want to do it globally. I think there's like so much potential. And at some point like that I thought about like leaving or like doing something else. He said like, I want to start like a global innovation offering for McCann Worldgroup. Would you like to lead it? I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Like New York is like my dream. So I moved here, and we started like mainly to a point, like bringing a lot of like startups. We have like our own internal database of startups that like every McCann employee from around the world can go to this database, look for if he wants like retail innovation or like now it's like the Metaverse, so he can find like relevant startup and like contact them directly. And also what we did is like try to think like, okay, how can we apply design thinking into like our day-to-day? How can we take all these methodologies like this design thinking?
Let's talk about design thinking. Explain what you mean by design thinking.
So design thinking like mainly think, and again, now I think it's more common, but back then it was not that common because like design thinking was mainly used by designers. It's mainly to understand like first like the human needs, like the issues, like the challenges that like we're trying to solve, like really dig into that, and then like try to understand like what are like the relevant ideas or innovation that like we can connect to the challenges, and wrap it around with like a smart solution. And then like the idea from like design thinking, you also need to move to like quick prototyping after. So again, it was like quite new at the time, and like for like big agencies to try and like work like in an agile way or like in a fast way, or actually open the creative process to different people. Like suddenly that like creatives will actually ideate with clients, with startups, with engineers. It was quite new that like we all sit together in the same room and like would come up with ideas. And like sometimes, by the way, we had like also like real people or like consumers. We had like one hack that it was all about like coming up with like innovative solution for like solving like Parkinson. So we brought patients to think together with them, and how amazing is that like by the end of it, like when you have like the ideas, you can validate the ideas together and say like, okay, what do you think? Do you think like it will be meaningful versus just like coming out like with an idea like.
One wonders how many times we do this and we don't bring the Parkinson's patients in, and we're sure we have the solution. I mean, we've seen this in award shows forever. Not in this one, by the way, but because we don't take nonprofit work, because we're very clear that anything that's related to solving those kind of problems, we should be proud of and not put in for award, which I think is really important. But how many times have we seen an agency come up with solution, but they actually haven't spoken to anybody? Exactly. And they win lots of awards, but then the next year, nobody can ever find it.
Yeah. Or like they didn't test it as well, they didn't get the feedback. So it's like going back to like what you said about like human tech, like going back to the humans. And of course, like it's also connected to like solving real problems and like real issues, like as I've seen.
And so how does the teen hack work?
Teen hack
because I think that's really interesting. They bring in young people to,
It started in Israel because like when I went,
because we're all teens.
Yes, yes. I started like to go to like all of these conferences, like tech conferences or like mid startup, and all the time there was like this like group of like 16 years old, like 15 years old, and I started like talking with them. And I asked them, so what do you do? And like each one of them was like, I'm a CEO of like this company. I just like wrote a book about like education. And it was like, and they were like serious. It was not like a joke. And like one of them, I remember like until today, I asked him like, okay, can you tell me about your solution? He's like, I need to speak with my lawyer first. I was like, oh my God, this is
Smart
crazy.
Kid.
Yeah. And then
you have to sign an NDA and then
and then we can speak. But like all the time, like first, like they made me feel bad about like myself and like what I did with my life when I was 16. But I was just like so inspired, and they said like, okay, I need to find a way. Like we always speak about like the young generation, like how we can think about like relevant, like from ads to products to services, and like what do they want. So the idea was, again, like, can we actually ideate together with them? So we started like doing this like teen hack in Israel. Like that was like the first one for Yoplait. We had like that brand in Israel, and we did it like through the night. They didn't sleep, which was amazing. And like they came up with ideas. We had like exercises for them, and then by the end of it, like we brought the clients that like they presented them the idea. All of them were like super innovative. They already like programmed like the solution overnight. So for me, it was like, okay, first again, with like the idea of even like the patients, like they're part of the ideas, but like they can also help like validate the idea.
So that's important. See, I think there's two things. One is not all those ideas, sometimes none of the ideas actually get to market, but they can help validate or bring you to other and sometimes bigger ideas. But my experience has also been that it inspires the client and it inspires the agency.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yes, definitely. And I think like sometimes, like I say, like when you bring like external people to the table to speak with the clients, it's easier because it's not like the agency telling them like what to do. They're like, here like real people, like experts or startups or technologists. And like if you hear it from them, like then maybe it would validate like the same point that like we were saying. But I totally agree, and I think like it inspires. They finally see like young generation or like other people that like they were not thinking about, and they understand like a point that like we were trying to make, and then it opened up for like new ideas or concepts or opportunities. Yes.
Great. So one of the things that's always bugged me is, well, I shouldn't say one. There's a lot of things that bug me, but you know there is one thing that the new agency model. Somehow everybody who puts in a new agency model. It's basically the same thing. You just change the titles of people, but you know you always need somebody to run the work, somebody to come up with the ideas, somebody to actually create this stuff. Mm-hmm. The second one, though, that really gets to me is the outdated creative approach, and I know that bugs you.
Yes.
So,
so I'll say like two things. I think at the end of the day, and regardless to any new technology, and I see it like all the time, from like Metaverse to AI, at the end of the day, like, and we know it, it's all about like a great idea or a great story, everything. So, and like we see also a lot of like stunts and gimmicks at the same time, like great, like maybe you will manage to get a headline, but like it's not like a meaningful solution by the end of the day. So on one hand, like it may be, I don't know, I'm not sure I want to say
that
outdated.
again, just so everybody pay attention, say it one more time.
The what, like the great idea?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Everything starts with like a great idea or a great story. Or I always say, like, just explain it like in one sentence, like the way that like you would explain it like your mom or your grandma. And like we saw, and I think like many, like in the last like 2 years, a lot of like stunts and gimmicks, and I go like every year to CES, and not this year, by the way, but they're like all the time this like, I'm sorry, like really stupid gimmicks and technologies. Like I don't understand like why would someone like spend like time and money on that. And I think like for like thinking about like creatives that like actually know the business, know the client business, know also how to come up with like great ideas and stories, then you bring them this new technologies in front of them, and it's almost like a new toolkit or like new colors or like new brushes that like they can decide like how to paint this like new picture. So I'm not sure, like some of them, and like some of the creatives are also obsessed with like technology and like would come up with like great ideas but like they will start from like the technology point of view versus like the idea human point of view. I think like the magic happens like when you marry like a great creative or like a great technologies or like put like inspiration in front of them. One of the things that like I actually did and like I'm super proud of that, like at some point like we said like, because like we're all the time like trying to inspire creatives, so like you would bring like it's Facebook or like Google or like companies or like startups, and they will present, and like the creatives are like great, but like I'm not sure how it's connected to like the brief that like I'm working on right now. So we tried like different things of like to see like how we can connect it to and like bring like more innovative ideas. And then I said like, okay, let's create a game. So we created like a cards game. And like one deck is like technology cards. And like all the time, like we update it with like new technology cards. And the other one is like what we call like truth cards, because like we have like a global intelligence unit as part of McCann, like Truth Central. So they have a lot of like insights about like humans. And then we said like, okay, we give you this game. For every brief you have, choose like one deck, one card of like technology, one card of a human insight, and see if it helps you. And for me, like mainly it was like to educate them without like them knowing that like they're being educated. But they can say, like, okay, I have this brief, what I can do with like augmented reality. Okay, that's interesting. Like what I can do with like virtual reality, and just get like the juices flowing a little bit. And in the pandemic, we turned that like into a digital game. And then like we said like to people every time like you have a brief, or like when we had these like hackathons, we just gave it to people, and like we managed to also customize the cards and add like new technologies, had like relevant insights related to the brand. And by like some of the time, like clients, like they were part of, like they loved it. Because they're like, oh, this is great. We didn't know about these technologies. We didn't think about it like that way. And it just helps you to come up with like different ideas. So for me, it's just like find this like, I would say like sneaky ways in a way to educate or to inspire creators.
But always coming back to the humanity.
Yes, always.
Because that's the problem.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, there was an agency, very famous agency, one of my favorites, so I'll mention the name. They created, remember Vine?
Mm-hmm, of course.
So Vine, of course, was going to change the world. Vine was going to put everything else out of business. Nobody remembers Vine anymore.
Yeah.
And they created a Vine application for a particular client that was brilliant. 5 people in the world used it, maybe. They won more awards than you could ever imagine. And within 2 years, nobody even knew it had ever existed.
Yeah.
Because they had never thought about the complexity of it, and did anybody really care, and was it really important, and was Vine going to really put everything else, cinema, books, whatever, out of business? And the answer, of course, was no.
Yeah.
Now, you're also famous for saying that, so you're well known around this notion of the idea's core, and getting to an idea has nothing to do with anything other than using your brain, and same as it's always been. But you say that the idea is only 50% of the deal.
The execution.
Exactly. So tell us.
And it actually, that's, I probably, because I heard it like a lot in Israel. Because like in Israel, by the way, and it's like similar like to the Silicon Valley. And like I think like now it's also like started here in New York. Like everyone like, and many people like at least like know me, they're like, oh, I have an idea for a startup. I have this like amazing idea, you have to hear it. I'm like, great, like we all have like amazing ideas for a startup. But like you can do this like great idea, but like mainly it's about like the execution.
Right.
It's like doing it, and like, also it depends on like the execution. We see different companies that like they all have like, by the way, like the same ideas, but like only some of them survive because again like they execute it like in a better way. So I think that applies to startups. I think it applies to our industry. And I think like we're definitely better like in our industry in terms of like pushing the envelope a little bit about like the execution, because like we know it's important, like the craft and the beauty, or like how to bring it to people, versus like startups that like sometimes like they will come up with this idea and they will put it out there. So yeah, like the idea is like, maybe right now I would even say it's like 8% of it, and like the way, like you still have, you can have like amazing ideas, but like the question is like how you execute it.
Can you actually do it?
Yeah, can you actually do it, and like which technology you would use for it.
So that brings me to the next question, which is chicken, egg, or omelet?
Yes.
Which comes first?
So this is because I went to this like massive research with, I spoke with like creative people from McCann Worldgroup. I spoke with like creative people from tech agencies, like tech digital agencies. I spoke with people from like tech companies, because like one of the questions was like all the time, do I start with like the technology? Okay, I hear about like this new hype or like new shiny object, like all the time we'll have like clients like, oh, I want to do something with like virtual reality. I want to do something with like AI. But do you actually start with like the technology, or do you start with like the idea first? Or does it actually something like in between that like we don't know, which is like the omelet, and this like magic that would happen. And I interviewed like tons of people to say like, okay, is it the chicken, is it the egg, is it the omelet? Like what do you have first? And also for me, and like it was like part of like the presentation that I gave, my husband is a chef. So for me, it's very easy to connect like everything to food because at the end of like, I have like a real human, a like normal person at home that like doesn't know anything about this like crazy technologies. And like for him, like when I go home and like explain him about something, if he gets it, I was like, okay, then like it means like it's a good idea or it's like an interesting innovation.
So my view, by the way, is that chefs are some of the most creative people in the world.
100%.
And Israeli chefs are amongst them. Interestingly enough, in New York today,
yes,
probably 5 of the top 10 chefs are Israeli.
Yeah. Well, I'm biased, so I would say yes, because I'm married to one. But like, is
just quick, what's your favorite restaurant in New York?
Estella. You know this one?
Yeah.
Well, I think we used to live like close to there, and it's like such a tiny place and an innovative chef.
And your favorite Israeli restaurant in New York?
Now it's Laser Wolf.
Ooh, I haven't been yet.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's good, right?
Yeah. It's the food, the view, the...
All right, we'll meet there once.
Yes, we'll go there. Yeah, I love the food over there. It's the closest I feel like you can get also to like Israeli food in New York, like in terms of like the...
Although I like barbunya, but
I was never been.
Okay, great. So we're going to switch.
Yeah, perfect.
So Laser Wolf and barbunya for those who live in New York.
Yeah,
really good
we'll
restaurants.
have like great accommodations after. So the chicken, the egg, or the omelets. And by the way, like I learned it like for like some companies, they actually start first with like technology. Always like start with like technology and not like real human needs. And others would start from like the idea. And again, I think like at the end of the day, like you don't know, like we know, like when you have an idea, it's kind of like a magical process in your brain. And I think it's all the time about like the right inspiration, like the right stimulation. And like my team know it, like all the time I would say, oh yeah, it's like either the chicken or either the egg. And like we don't know.
But sometimes it is the omelet, which I love.
Yeah.
That just really got me thinking about a lot of stuff too. So thank you for that. Last question just about work.
Yes.
The Innovation Council.
Yes.
That's one of the things that I found to be the most interesting, the way you've brought clients into the discussion, but not in a particular way around their campaigns or their work, but much more in a connective community way.
Yeah. I'm very proud of the Innovation Council, so thank you for mentioning that. I think it started, again, I went to these tech conferences, or like I met like our clients, they all had like the same challenges. And not like some of them like same challenges about like their own company, but some of it was like, oh, we don't know like from where to start, we don't know like how to convince like leadership, we don't know like where to invest. And I was like, oh my God, like you're all speaking like the same language. But like I think like many innovation or like tech people per se, like in big companies or like in agencies, I can say that like sometimes like you feel like pretty isolated because like you don't know how to convince like the broader community. And it's like started from like a simple idea. I'm like, okay, we should just like put like everyone in a room together. They will enjoy like the networking, because I said like, I didn't need to bring them like another like tech company or another startup. They have like enough of it. Like it's mainly to find like different colleagues from like different companies that like they can speak and meet and speak like candidly about like their challenges or like brainstorm solutions or imagine like new possibilities. And it took some time to get to there, but like we had like the first meeting at CES in 2020. And I said all the time, like I need like a different theme. So the first one, and by the way, it's all the time like human theme. It's not like technology theme.
Which I love.
The first one was all about like magic. So we brought a magician from Vegas to speak with them about like there is innovation, is innovative process and creative process. And then it inspired them to think like differently about like everything else. During the pandemic, we had to meet like virtually. I said like, okay, the theme will be like the orchestra of solution. I brought a composer to speak with them about it. Now we did like one in New York, like when there was like a gap, like in the pandemic a little bit. One of the things that I also love to take people is like what I call like, we do like at CES or outside, like a safari. So like at CES, we create like a tech safari that like will take like our clients around and like will show like relevant like innovations. But like again, from like a human perspective, in New York, I started like something that I call like a future safari. There are like so many like innovative spaces or new concepts of retail. So like we took them. Some of them are also like they live in New York, but like they've never been in these places or like they never spoke with the founders. But for them, it was like the first time they could touch, they could smell, they could hear, they could think about like how the future. It's not really the future because it's happening right now. So there was all the time this like idea of like different stimuli, and then like conversations. And for me, and we're just there to facilitate the conversations. We're not trying to imply ourselves like in any way, imply ourselves. We're not trying to push them in terms of ideas. It's mainly, this is like your space. We're just to create like a space for you and help you to connect and think differently. And I think like, at least like for me, my biggest success like out of it is that like over the pandemic, like one client like went to meet like another client and they had like a brainstorming session. After this session we had like right now, they started to connect like on their own. And they all feel like so honored, like on one hand, to be like all together.
I love the stimuli though. I once put David Blaine on stage with Michael Dell at their big client conference, and it was exactly that same thought, is how do you stimulate people to think in a different way? And magic was definitely, and we've used composers and conductors. I love it. So I'm just going to read, and again, forgive me for I call this my Oprah book, but what really turned me on was, again, as you say, it all comes back to the humanity of it. And this just from some of your clients, from some of the things that they said, and I want to share with everybody because none of this is really about technology, to your point. They're not talking to you about, yeah, you got to be digital first or mobile first or wearable first or, telepathy first. They were talking about optimism.
That's nice.
They were talking about intimacy. And this I love, a spotlight on truth. Never let the glare of a shiny new object eclipse the humanity of anything. That was you, actually, who said that. And so that was amazing. And no wonder your clients go to that, because I think that's a difference, to talk about the humanity of it. Which leads me to a question about ethics, which is something that I said we would just come back to. Something I write a lot about the ethical side of our world today, and the ethical side of technology, and what are we accountable for? What is Meta accountable for? Google or anybody else accountable for? Mm-hmm. My experience is that people who write about it or talk about it are troubled by it. It's only people who aren't troubled who don't talk about it. So what troubles you?
So I think like all the time when there's a new technology or a trend, I always like try to understand, like, okay, I can understand like the technology side of it, but what it means for me as a human being, what it means for my kids, and of course, like what it means for our clients and our brands, and like what is like a different point of view that like we can have on that. Because I feel like there are like so many like similar point of views versus what is like our unique take. I'm always like, for me, it's like, again, like maybe it's like being Israel, it's like, okay, there must be like something different or like another use case, or also like to put like the truth in everyone's face and say like, that might be a bad technology, or like there could be like some dangers here. And like one of like my slides, like when we speak about like the Metaverse or Web3 right now, my first slide, when I start like speaking about it, I say the use cases can be good or bad. And it can be good for humanity or your company, and it can also be bad. We should be aware of that. And unfortunately, from the beginning of history, people always used innovation for like good or bad reasons. And I think that we should be aware of that.
Which, by the way, is why Nobel started the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Because he basically created the way for us to blow each other up, but also to create tunnels and to build buildings, and it always troubled him. So you're right. I mean, everything has a good side. I would also say, though, that the Metaverse in particular has a good, a bad, and a stupid side.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I think the stupid side, unfortunately, from what I see, is getting way too much attention in our world, meaning amongst our colleagues and the advertising world. I don't know if you saw, Meta had a video, I'll call it a commercial because it was running on linear TV as well, so make a note. Meta, Google, Amazon all run on linear broadcast TV, so go figure that one out. And just, I would think about it if I was you to some of the points that we made. But I don't know if you remember it. There were 6 people sitting around a conference table, and they put on headsets to do the meeting in the Metaverse when they were sitting at the table together.
I know.
And I remember looking at that thinking, like, either I'm stupid or I'm missing the point here, but why would people who have this opportunity to be community and all the things you talked about before sit around the table? I get if I'm in Oshkosh and you're in Brooklyn, maybe.
Yeah.
But
I know, that's like what I feel like sometimes, like this tech companies that like they're trying to push the technologies on us. But I think like then it's very easy to understand, like, and you see the numbers like from the population, like it's still like not getting adopted. Probably it will get better. Probably there will be like
there are great use cases.
Yeah, there are like
question.
great. I think like for like virtual reality, there could be like great use cases in terms of like health actually, and like people are like
elderly people.
Yeah, elderly people. And like we saw, like by one of my favorite innovations from like CES this year was there was a company that like used like virtual reality headset as an eye doctor. So you can get like all of like your tests, your prescription, everything through this headset. So again, it helps, of course, like it saves time for people.
Smart.
And like people that don't have access to medical care, they can use it. So for me, they're like, okay, that makes sense. But again, to your point, there could be like this like, for somebody, it could be like also experimentation, which is great, but then don't put the headline around it probably. So I think like ethically, and I would go back to like the little humans that I have at home. I'll be like, what it means for them. Like, for example, like I would not put like my kids on social media because I said, okay, they need to decide if they want to be there or not. So it's like their decision. At the same time, I'm not sure I want my son at some point to be with like virtual reality headset like all the time and not be able to connect with like his real friends. So this is like something like I start to think about.
We should all be thinking about that.
Yeah.
Frank.
And I feel like, I don't know, there should be like some kind of like a community or like an organization that like would say for like every technology we put out there, we also create like a real life experience that like kids or humans can enjoy. It's like almost for like every tree we plant, we should do something in the real life. Mainly after COVID, I feel like we all appreciate that a little bit more. But like, yes, I know that like at some point, like my kid would start like playing those games, but at the same time, I want to have this like amazing experience for him in the real world that like he will be able to enjoy and like,
be part of a community of real
exactly,
people.
and be part of the community. So I think it's that. I think it's like shining the light. I think like for me, maybe because I'm a woman, maybe because like I'm an immigrant, like it's very easy for me to see all of these like holes and like understand like, okay, what is missing. Even like when it comes to AI, I think like it's very easy to say like, this is amazing, we're gonna sell it. And most of the times, like also our clients, when we came to them, they said like, we do appreciate it. Like you have this like humble approach and like you're not coming to us like saying, this is going to change everything. How many times we've heard like about like something, like even you said it, like this is gonna change everything. Like, but like still, we go to the cinema, we still go to museum, we still go to restaurants.
Something I've written about for the longest time. Absolutely, I totally agree. One last question.
Yes.
Future Now, executive jury, New York festivals, very important. We have people out there who are going to be putting in their submissions. What are you going to be looking for? What should they be thinking about?
Humanity. You know, I feel like if there's like one theme to it all, it's like solving real human problems, like investing like everything that we can, or like the amazing brains or creativity that we have like in this industry to support like real people or real problems, or like have like an impact in culture. I think for me, that's like when I get like most excited. And also, and like you said it, like to see the potential in terms of like the scale and like what can you do. I think like also sometimes, yes, companies or like agencies will have this like great innovation, will get a headline and then like will not like actually try to put it in market. I think that's the challenging part. Then to bring it to the market, like to push it to the market, to make sure like people are using it, to reiterate, like we're not used to think about that like sometimes as a creative industry.
So I'm just telling you all, the Future Now category is amazing. And the executive jury is off the charts. Bunch of my friends are on that with you. And I'm not gonna mention the names because they're also gonna be on this, being part of the interview process. But if you win, trust me, you have deserved it.
Yes.
That is absolutely clear from talking to you, and just, I can't thank you enough.
Oh, I thank you. Like, toda. I'm so excited. I can't believe I managed to do it.
Well, thank you. What can I say? Everything I heard about you is true, and it was just an absolute honor and a pleasure to talk to you. And you are now a yedidah shel David.
Oh.
You're a friend of David, an FOD.
Wow.
And to that point,
there's much.
I'm always so happy to do this.
I love it.
You get your
nice
creativity from the other side New York Festival shirt.
That's definitely
with
the coolest shirt.
The FOD in the middle, friend of David, so you can wear this.
I love it.
Tell everybody you are my yedidah.
Yes.
A very, very important yedidah now. That's friend in Hebrew. And so, friends, those of you who've been watching and paying attention and hopefully learning as I have, thank you so much for being with us again today. This is David Sable coming to you for New York Festivals from Silverstein Studios in Lower Manhattan in the World Trade Center Plaza. Just an incredible place, Renaissance of New York. And see you again.